The summer heat pressed against my skin as I watched them from my window. 4 of them, young and carefree, moving boxes into the house next door. Their laughter carried across my perfectly manicured lawn, a stark contrast to the silence that had filled my home for the past year. I couldn't help but notice the way their shirts clung to their frames, damp with exertion, revealing the kind of youthful energy I'd almost forgotten existed. My fingers lingered on the curtain, hesitating, before letting it fall back into place. I shouldn't be watching, but I couldn't look away. Before I continue, if you're enjoying this story, please take a second to like and subscribe. Your support means everything, and you'll never miss what comes next. Now let's get back to what happened that evening. I was 42, divorced, successful, and completely numb. The dating scene at my age was a wasteland of disappointments. Men with baggage heavier than mine. Conversations that never progressed beyond polite interest. I'd resigned myself to a life of quiet predictability. Wake up, excel at work, come home to my empty house, repeat. The rhythm was comfortable, if not fulfilling. Until they moved in. The fraternity house next door had been vacant for months. When the realtor mentioned college seniors would be moving in, I had prepared myself for noise complaints and beer cans on my lawn. What I hadn't prepared for was the way they would make me feel, suddenly aware of every inch of my skin, every year. Between us, every forbidden thought that shouldn't cross my mind. That night, I poured myself a glass of Cabernet, settling into the silence of my home, trying to ignore the muffled sounds of their housewarming celebration. Music pulsed through our shared wall, vibrating against my fingertips as I traced the rim of my glass. I closed my eyes, letting the deep bass reverberate through me, when a sharp knock interrupted my thoughts. When I opened the door, I wasn't prepared for them standing there. All 4 of them, looking slightly sheepish but with that unmistakable confidence that comes with youth. The one in front, tall with dark curls falling across his forehead, smiled apologetically. "Sorry to bother you, ma'am. Our power just went out and none of us know anything about circuit breakers. The property manager said you might be able to help?" "Ma'am?" The words stung slightly, a reminder of the years between us. But his eyes. There was something there. A flicker of appreciation as they briefly traveled down my silk robe, cinched tightly at the waist. "It's Victoria," I corrected, stepping aside to let them in. "And I'm only 39. The lie slipped out effortlessly. They introduced themselves as they entered. James, the one who'd spoken first. Tyler, blonde with shoulders that stretched his t-shirt in ways that made my mouth go dry. Marcus, whose smile revealed perfect teeth and dimples that shouldn't be legal. And Ethan, quieter than the others, but with eyes that seemed to catch every detail. "The circuit breaker is in the basement," I said, leading them through my immaculate home. "Your houses share the same system. It's been a problem for years." I felt their eyes on me as we descended the stairs, the silk of my robe flowing around my calves. The basement was cooler, darker, more intimate somehow. I was suddenly aware of how outnumbered I was. 4 of them, 1 of me, in a space cut off from the rest of the world. But instead of fear, I felt something else stirring. Something I hadn't felt in longer than I cared to admit. "Here," I said, opening the electrical panel. "One of your circuits probably overloaded. Too many devices plugged in at once." James stepped closer, his warmth radiating against my side. "Show me which one," he said, his voice lower than before. Our fingers brushed, as I pointed to the tripped switch. A small touch, barely anything, but electricity shot up my arm. His eyes met mine, and I knew he felt it too. "Flip it back," I instructed, my voice steadier than I felt. "But you'll need to unplug some things first, or it'll just happen again." "We'll be more careful," Tyler said, moving closer on my other side. "We don't want to bother you again." "Unless you want us to," Marcus added, his smile teasing but his eyes serious. The air in the basement changed, charged with something unmistakable. 4 pairs of eyes on me, 4 bodies mere inches away. I should have laughed it off, should have reminded them of my age, should have sent them home. Instead, I looked at each of them in turn and said, "Maybe I wouldn't mind." The moment stretched between us, a decision point. I could still step back, make a joke, return to my quiet life. But something had awakened in me. A hunger, a recklessness, a desire to feel alive again. Ethan, the quiet one, was the first to move. His hand reached out, tentative, brushing a strand of hair from my face. "You're beautiful," he said simply. My breath caught. James stepped closer, his confidence growing. "We've seen you watching us," he murmured. "From your window." Heat flushed my cheeks. "I haven't..." It's okay, Tyler interrupted, his hand finding the curve of my waist. We've been watching you, too. They surrounded me now, their youthful bodies forming a circle of heat and anticipation. Marcus behind me, his breath warm on my neck. James and Tyler at my sides, their hands hovering, waiting for permission. Ethan in front, his eyes never leaving mine. This is crazy, I whispered, even as my body leaned toward them. Tell us to stop, James said, his lips brushing my ear. I didn't. What followed was a blur of sensation, my robe falling open under Ethan's careful fingers. Tyler's mouth on my collarbone, trailing heat down my skin. Marcus's hands steady on my hips, guiding me backward until I felt the wall cool against my spine. James watching, directing, his voice a low murmur of appreciation. They moved with the uncertainty of youth combined with the eagerness to learn. When I gasped at a particular touch, they noted it, repeated it, improved upon it. My body became a map they were determined to explore thoroughly, their hands tracing paths that had been neglected for too long. Upstairs, I managed to say between shortened breaths. My bedroom. The journey up the stairs was punctuated by pauses. Against the wall, on the steps, in the hallway, as if they couldn't bear to stop touching me for more than a moment. By the time we reached my bedroom, my skin was flushed, my heart racing. They laid me on my bed with unexpected tenderness, as though I was something precious and breakable. I almost laughed. I had never felt stronger, more powerful than in this moment, surrounded by their youth and vigor, their desire focused entirely on me. Let me show you, I said, reaching for James. He came willingly, eagerly, his body hovering over mine. I guided his hands, showing him exactly where to touch, how much pressure to apply. The others watched, learning, their eyes dark with anticipation. The bed dipped as Tyler joined us, his hands finding new territory to explore. Marcus followed, his mouth replacing his fingers in a way that made my back arch. Ethan, still the quietest, took his cues from my responses, noting which movements drew the deepest reactions. They took turns, each bringing their own approach. James was confident, almost commanding despite his age. Tyler was playful, experimenting with different rhythms. Marcus was attentive to every reaction, every subtle shift. And Ethan, observant Ethan, somehow knew exactly when to increase pressure, when to ease back, when to take me right to the edge and keep me there. I lost track of time, lost track of whose hands were where, whose mouth was creating that sensation. They blended together into a continuous wave of pleasure that built and crashed and built again. 4 young men with endless stamina and eagerness to please, and me, showing them exactly how a woman should be touched. Like this? Tyler would ask, his movements adjusting. Yes, I'd breathe. Just like that. Ethan barely spoke, but his eyes asked questions his mouth didn't. I answered with guidance, with appreciation, with sounds that encouraged him to continue. Marcus was inventive, trying angles and approaches that surprised even me. Tell me if it's too much, he'd whisper, but it never was. And James watched everything, learning from his friends' successes and missteps, building his knowledge with each passing moment. When his turn came again, the improvement was dramatic. Quick learner, I murmured against his ear. Excellent teacher, he responded. They took me higher than I'd been in years, perhaps ever. The intensity built not just from physical sensation, but from the forbidden nature of it all. Their youth, their number, the unexpectedness of the situation. I was alive again, every nerve ending firing, every inch of skin sensitive to their touch. When the final peak hit, it wasn't gentle. It tore through me with such force that I cried out, my body arching off the bed, held in place only by their steady hands. They watched in fascination, in pride, in growing understanding of what they were capable of creating. Afterward, they didn't leave immediately as I had half expected. Instead, they settled around me, their youthful bodies providing warmth and comfort. No awkwardness, no regrets, just a satisfied silence punctuated by slowing breaths and occasional murmurs of appreciation. We should let you rest, James finally said, brushing his lips against my shoulder. I caught his wrist, surprising even myself. Stay. They did. All 4 of them somehow fitting into my king-sized bed, their bodies arranged around mine like a protective circle. I drifted off to the sound of their breathing, feeling more at peace than I had in longer than I could remember. The morning light woke me, filtering through curtains I hadn't closed in my distraction. I was alone, But the indentations on my pillows, the tangled sheets, the lingering scent of them assured me it hadn't been a dream. As I stretched, feeling pleasantly sore in forgotten places, I heard movement downstairs. Following the sounds, I found them in my kitchen, attempting to make breakfast. The domestic scene was almost more shocking than what had preceded it. "We thought you might be hungry," Ethan explained, flipping what appeared to be a slightly burnt pancake. "After all that exertion," Marcus added with a wink. I leaned against the doorframe, watching them move around my kitchen. They had showered. In my bathroom, apparently, their hair still damp, wearing the same clothes from yesterday but somehow looking refreshed. "This doesn't have to be awkward," James said, reading my expression. "Unless you want it to be." "I don't do awkward," I replied, accepting the coffee Tyler handed me. "But I do have questions about what happens next." They exchanged glances, a silent communication passing between them. "That's entirely up to you," James said. "We're here all semester." "All of us," Tyler added. "Or just one of us. Or none. Your choice." The power had shifted somehow. Last night, I had been the one in control, the experienced one showing them the way. Now they were offering me options, putting the decision in my hands while making it clear they were interested in continuing. I sipped my coffee, considering. One night of recklessness was one thing. A continuing arrangement was something else entirely. They were so young, with their whole lives ahead of them. I had responsibilities, a reputation to maintain, and yet, the thought of returning to my orderly, predictable life seemed suddenly unbearable. "Let's start with breakfast," I decided. "And then we'll see." They smiled. 4 different smiles that I was already learning to distinguish. 4 young men who had changed something fundamental in me overnight, awakening a part of myself I had buried under years of responsibility and propriety. As I moved to help them with breakfast, Ethan caught my hand, bringing it to his lips in a gesture that seemed too mature for his years. "Thank you," he said quietly, "for everything you taught us." I felt myself flush, not with embarrassment, but with pleasure. "The semester's just starting," I reminded him. "There's still a lot to learn." His eyes darkened. "I'm a very dedicated student." The others murmured agreement, their gazes intense despite the morning light and domestic setting. The heat between us hadn't diminished with the night. If anything, it had deepened with familiarity. They stayed for breakfast and lunch and, well, into the afternoon. Conversation flowed easily, punctuated by lingering touches and knowing glances. By the time they finally left, promising to return that evening, I knew my life had irrevocably changed. Standing in my doorway, watching them cross the lawn to their house, I felt lighter than I had in years. Age was just a number. Experience had its advantages. And sometimes, the most unexpected encounters could breathe life back into a soul that had forgotten how to feel. Have you ever had a moment that completely changed your understanding of yourself? A decision that seemed crazy at the time but led to unexpected joy? I'd love to hear your stories in the comments below. And if this resonated with you, please hit that like button and subscribe to hear more of my experiences. Turn on notifications so you don't miss what happens next. Trust me, this is just the beginning. Until next time, remember that sometimes the most beautiful chapters of our lives begin with the words, "What if?"